Shalom. Just wanted to make this quick video to kind of go a little bit further on what I talked about in my previous video about the vaccines and about how they're already throwing out suggestions that this vaccine that they finally settle on to mass produce and distribute to virtually everybody on this planet will be unlike any vaccine that we've ever seen. Because by the very definition of the word vaccine, this particular vaccine will not function as such. As I had in my previous video where towards the end of it, I had the definition of the word vaccine in plain view. And you can clearly see that by definition, a vaccine is something that grants the patient immunity. It grants the patient an immunity to whatever it is that that person is being vaccinated against. That is the literal definition of a vaccine. So by the literal definition, a vaccine is designed to protect you from something. So it's true. It's purely a personal protection. That is by its very definition. Yet we have billionaires and we have well-known lawyers now throwing out the idea that the very definition of vaccine will change in the not too distant future. Now, I already talked about the segment in a June 25th CNN town hall where Bill Gates made the statement that the vaccine for this particular virus could work one of two ways. A segment that is suspiciously absent from the online copy of this particular interview on the CNN website. But I would like to focus now on another statement that was made by Alan Dershowitz, in this case, a well-known attorney. In a interview, this is a pretty well circulated interview too. It is the one where he does like an internet interview with some guy, and I'll have a link to this interview on down in the description of this video so that you can see it in its entirety. But it's been circulated around. It's pretty infamous because this is the interview where he basically states that the federal government can force people to be vaccinated, that your constitutional rights do not cover you not being vaccinated by the government. Now this is the key point, and this is where Dershowitz, just like Bill Gates, starts to lay the groundwork for there being a different type of vaccine, a vaccine that does not function like a vaccine. So basically he says that if the vaccine is designed to prevent the spread of a disease. Now, when you look at the definition of vaccine, you find that there is no possible way a vaccine works that way. Yes, it would stop the spread of the disease if the notion was everybody that's vaccinated is granted an immunity. And then by them being immune to the virus, they can no longer catch it and thus no longer transmit it. That is how typically a vaccine stops the spread of a disease. That is how the very concept of herd immunity functions. Once people start becoming immune to it, they can no longer catch it. If they can no longer catch it, they can no longer transmit it. Never in the history of this planet has the very concept of a vaccination or an inoculation against a virus or disease simply meant that you would not transmit that virus or disease. But yet, here we are, 2020, and we have billionaires and well-known attorneys now attempting to change the very concept of a vaccine, change the very definition of what vaccine means. So Dershowitz goes on to state that if the vaccine was simply to make you immune to a virus, the government cannot force you to be vaccinated. But if the vaccine simply stops the spread of the virus, then, according to Dershowitz, you can be vaccinated. So here we are, another example that I should have put this in another video, but I completely forgot about it. But this is another example where they are throwing out the little groundworks for this change in the very definition of a vaccine. These are the little beginning steps, and I imagine we will start to hear more of this new concept of a vaccine in the not too distant future. And another thing you have to understand, they have started trials on vaccines, but people need to know something. That's all smoke and mirrors. The real vaccine, the one that they will finally settle on, the one that will be mass produced, the one that will be distributed all over the planet, is already ready to go. What we see right now is simply the theatrics, because this is naturally how the course of these things go. They come up with something, and then they they experiment with it. They have human trials on it. You know, it's a lot of trial and error. That's how it naturally goes. And they understand that. They cannot just bring out a vaccine out of the blue and say, here it is. You know, they have to go through the act, if you will. You know, they have to play out the script. So what we see right now is simply theatrics. We'll have a lot of trial and errors. We'll have a lot of studies being released about this vaccine worked, or how well it worked, or how well it didn't work and everything. But let me tell you, the real vaccine is already ready to go. It's already ready to go. You know, because this is something, I mean, I really don't know what to call it. It should not be called a vaccine. It really shouldn't. Something that simply stops the spread of a disease should not be called a vaccine, because by the very definition, it is not one. I don't know what you could call something like this. Just call it the shot. You know, and you have to really think about the concept of how could something stop the spread of a disease but not grant immunity to that disease. How could that possibly work? You know, how could something that you take simply stop you from transmitting material out of your body, but will not stop you from catching or inhaling that material? In other words, it doesn't grant you any immunity to it. It just stops you from spreading it to others if you so happen to have it. And they're laying the groundwork for all this. It's being laid out right before our eyes. This is the real reason why they keep pushing the idea of asymptomatic spreaders. That's what this is all about. They're going to claim that this pandemic is being made worse, not by the people who have symptoms, but mainly by the people who do not have any symptoms. So they're basically claiming that everybody walking around is quite literally a walking, talking biological weapon. And this will be the main reason for the push for mass vaccinations on virtually everybody, regardless if you feel bad or have symptoms or not, regardless of if you have been diagnosed, tested or not. And the main, and when it comes to the number one reason that forced vaccinations and mandatory vaccinations have been held at bay for this long, is because the very definition of the word vaccine means that you cannot righteously or morally force anyone to be vaccinated. By the very definition of it, a vaccine should simply be a personal choice. If you're scared of the virus, get vaccinated. If you're not, well, don't get vaccinated. But as long as the people who are scared of the virus are vaccinated, they don't have to worry about you. By the very definition of the word vaccine, that argument is infallible. But we have it looks like a growing effort to change the very definition of the word vaccine, to make it mean something that has never existed. So we're now in the theatrics of it all, the trial and error. But around the first of next year, we'll be greeted with the statement that the perfect vaccine against the virus has been discovered. And then mass production will ensue. Something about India is being chosen to be the mass producer of it. I'm pretty sure that facility that all that will take place in is already being built, or is being built. It's probably just being finalized. Everything's being put in place. And the vaccine, of course, will also coincide with the identification and all that different kind of stuff that a lot of people are really starting to wake up to, I have to say. They're really putting out a lot of good information about that, a lot of different channels. People see it coming. This is not one of those situations where this will catch people off guard. This will not catch anyone off guard. Nobody will see this and not be suspicious. And because of that, it's not going to be a smooth operation at all. I imagine it's going to cause quite a bit of conflict. We might actually have some regional wars break loose. This might actually trigger the second civil war in America. They've been trying to get it going over race relations and things like that. I have a feeling that the vaccine, that will get it going. They bring that shit out. They start forcing local governments and everything to try to mandate that crap. They start forcing big name, big box retailers to restrict anybody who has not been vaccinated, who does not have proof of vaccination, from entering their stores, from doing business. Basically the same thing that we see them doing with masks. Walmart just recently said they won't serve anybody or let anyone in their store that isn't wearing a mask. That easily can transfer over to being same thing about a vaccine. Unless you can show proof that you've been vaccinated, unless you can show your vaccine identification card, you won't be able to shop at Walmart. So, this has the potential to really set some stuff off. I really do think that this will be the catalyst. There's been a lot of potential catalysts in the past, but I do think this is it. This will be it. So people need to be prepared. You know, you need to have your rations set aside. You need to have at least one firearm. If you can splurge, have several firearms of several different calibers, and at least maybe 300 rounds of ammunition for each caliber. See, that gives you variety. If one particular caliber is scarce, like 5.56, 223. Well, if you also have an AK-47, you can find some 7.62 by 39. If you have a 9mm pistol and you also have a 45, maybe you can't find any 9mm ammunition, but you might be able to find some 45. So that's the theory around having multiple firearms of various calibers. It gives you more options. It gives you more flexibility. So these are things to consider. Times are looking kind of shaky, but just know that with faith in the Most High, Yah, that is the primary shield and power for those who wish to survive what's to come. Shalom.